Imagine being lost in a frozen wilderness with nothing to survive on, and then a stranger appears, offering you warmth, safety, and hope. Today's story is about a woman who had nothing, yet a lone cowboy risked everything to save her. You won't believe the courage, trust, and unexpected bond that grew in the harshest conditions. Before we dive into this incredible Wild West tale, make sure to subscribe, share this video, and leave a comment. Let's get started with this story that proves, even in the coldest moments, humanity can shine. Brightest, the snow was falling harder than usual, blanketing the wilderness in a thick, icy white. Every tree and rock seemed frozen in time, and the wind carried a bite that could steal warmth from a body in seconds. Out on the trail, the cowboy's horse trudged slowly, each step sinking into the deep snow. That's when he saw her, a motionless figure near the frozen creek. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, but as he approached, he realized she was a woman, shivering violently, her ragged clothes soaked and clinging to her thin frame. He dismounted without hesitation, his boots crunching sharply on the icy ground. He knelt beside her and immediately saw the severity of her condition. Her lips were blue, her skin nearly translucent, and her body trembled with cold. The wind whipped around them, cutting through the layers of his coat and the blankets he carried. He wrapped her in his thickest coat, pulling her close to his chest. She was light, almost frighteningly so, as if the cold had stolen every ounce of strength from her. He murmured to her, letting her know she was safe, though he wasn't sure she could hear him. Lifting her carefully, he settled her across the horse's back, securing her as best he could. The journey back to his cabin was perilous. The snow had hidden the trail, and every step could mean a fall into a frozen creek or a hidden ditch. His horse's hooves crunched rhythmically, a fragile rhythm against the storm's chaos. She remained limp in his arms, barely moving, as if her body had been emptied of life itself. The cowboy kept speaking softly, recounting stories of the plains, the animals he had encountered, and small things to keep her aware and anchored in the present. When they finally arrived at the cabin, the warmth of the fire was a shocking contrast to the frozen wilderness outside. He laid her gently by the hearth, wrapping her in additional blankets and stoking the flames until they roared with life. Her shivering was relentless, but the gradual heat began to seep into her bones. The cowboy fetched hot water and a simple broth, coaxing her to drink. Each sip she took was a victory, each breath a reminder that she was still alive. For the first time, he allowed himself a small sigh of relief. Over the next few hours, he worked tirelessly, tending to her frostbitten fingers and feet, replacing her wet clothes with dry ones and keeping her close to the warmth of the fire. Her eyes opened slightly, revealing confusion, fear, and an almost imperceptible glimmer of gratitude. She whispered words he couldn't quite hear, and he simply nodded, telling her she was safe. No questions, no assumptions, just safety. He knew from years of experience that survival was more than food and warmth. It was trust, and he intended to earn hers. By nightfall, she was able to sit, still fragile but breathing easier. She looked around the cabin, eyes wide as if seeing life for the first time in months. Everything she had known had been stripped away, her family, her home, her possessions, and yet she survived. The cowboy offered her food, simple and nourishing, which she accepted with hesitation. Her movements were careful, tentative, as if she feared the world might snatch her strength away again. He didn't rush her. In his quiet, steadfast way, he understood that trust and patience could heal wounds faster than any fire or broth. The next day she spoke for the first time with clarity. She was an Apache woman, lost during a raid, forced to survive alone in the cold wilderness. The cowboy listened without interruption, letting her words flow as she recounted nights spent under the stars, hiding from wolves and strangers alike. He asked no questions, offered no judgment, simply kept her warm and nourished. She had nothing left, yet she still carried a remarkable resilience. He admired her silently, realizing that survival was as much a battle of the mind and spirit as it was of the body. As days passed, she began to regain strength, moving with slightly more confidence and helping with small chores around the cabin. She learned to prepare simple meals over the fire, mend torn clothing, and gather firewood. The cowboy taught her without forcing his guidance, allowing her to adapt at her own pace. The silence between them was comfortable, not empty. Even without words, there was understanding, a mutual respect forming quietly in the shared warmth of the cabin. She was still cautious, still wary of trust, But slowly, she began to allow herself to feel safe. One evening, a storm rolled in from the north, wild and unrelenting. The wind shook the cabin walls, snow swirling violently outside. The cowboy moved tirelessly to reinforce the structure, check the fire, and ensure she remained safe and warm. She watched him, awe mixing with gratitude, as he worked without complaint. In that moment, she realized the depth of his care. He had welcomed her when she had nothing, and his actions spoke louder than any words. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope, a sense that the world was not entirely merciless. By the end of that stormy night, she finally spoke the words she had carried silently in her heart. "Thank you," she said, voice trembling but firm. "I have nothing but you. You gave me everything I needed." The cowboy only nodded, brushing aside her words with quiet humility, yet deep down he understood their truth. In saving her, he had created a bond neither could deny. It was not just about survival, it was about compassion, trust, and a connection forged in the harshest of conditions. From that night on, the cabin no longer felt empty. The days that followed were calmer, yet filled with quiet, meaningful progress. The Apache woman, once fragile and shivering, began moving through the cabin with a purpose. She learned the rhythm of daily life under the cowboy's guidance, how to stoke the fire just right, how to tend to small meals, and how to care for the few animals he kept. She observed everything with a cautious curiosity, her eyes reflecting both wariness and a growing sense of belonging. The cowboy never forced her, never pried into her past, but his presence spoke volumes, a silent assurance that she was safe. She began to smile, more small gestures that carried immense weight. A nod, a gentle laugh at the crackle of the fire, or the way she carefully tended the herbs he had grown. Each movement, each sound, was a sign of life returning, a spirit that had nearly been extinguished now flickering brightly again. The cowboy noticed the change but said nothing. He simply offered steady companionship. In this quiet companionship, a bond formed that went beyond words. Trust, once fragile, was now strengthening with each shared task and silent evening by the fire. Winter slowly loosened its grip. Snow melted into muddy streams, and the world outside the cabin transformed into a landscape of tentative green. The woman discovered the freedom of walking outside without fear, feeling the sun's warmth on her face and the soil under her boots. The cowboy accompanied her often, teaching her the subtle ways of the land, how to track small animals, identify edible plants, and avoid hidden dangers in the woods. She absorbed every lesson with an eagerness that surprised even him. Though she had nothing, her resilience and willingness to learn revealed a spirit stronger than many who had wealth and comfort. As spring deepened, the woman began to speak more freely, recounting memories of her family and life before the raid. Each story was tinged with loss but also courage, a testament to her will to survive. The cowboy listened, never interrupting, never judging, simply acknowledging her words with a nod or a small remark. In time, she no longer flinched when she laughed, no longer hesitated to accept his help. She had begun to trust not only the safety of the cabin, but the man who had given it freely. Their connection deepened in ways words could not capture. One morning, the woman awoke to find the cowboy already outside, chopping wood for the fire. She watched him, noticing the quiet strength in his movements, the care he gave even to the smallest tasks. She felt a wave of gratitude and something else, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. Slowly, she stepped outside to join him, offering a hand to carry logs. He accepted with a nod, and together they worked, side by side, in a comfortable silence. In that shared labor, there was understanding, respect, and an unspoken acknowledgement of the bond that had formed. Weeks passed, and life began to feel ordinary, yet extraordinary in its simplicity. The woman started helping the cowboy with hunting and gathering, developing skills she had thought lost forever. Each day she grew stronger, her confidence returning, her fear of the world fading. The cowboy, too, found a new rhythm in life, not one of loneliness but companionship. He shared stories of the land, tales of survival, and moments of quiet humor, and she responded with laughter and curiosity. Their lives, once solitary, now intertwined in ways neither had anticipated. One evening, as the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the cabin, the woman prepared a small meal over the fire. The cowboy watched her, noting the care and precision in her movements. She looked up at him, eyes bright, and said softly, "I never thought I could feel safe again. You gave me life when I had none left." The words struck him deeply. He had acted out of instinct, out of compassion, never expecting gratitude, yet here it was, sincere and heartfelt. In that moment, he realized that their connection had grown into something far more profound than mere survival. The bond between them became unbreakable, forged not by circumstance but by choice. She had nothing when she arrived, yet she brought courage, resilience, and the ability to trust again into his life. He, in turn, offered safety, guidance, and a heart willing to protect someone truly vulnerable. Together, they rebuilt not just her body and spirit, but a shared life filled with purpose. She learned the joy of small victories, catching a rabbit, planting seeds, mending clothing, and celebrated these with a quiet pride that warmed his heart. By the time spring fully arrived, the wilderness around the cabin had transformed into a vibrant expanse of green and life. The woman now walked with confidence, her laughter ringing through the woods, her presence a light against the backdrop of the untamed land. The cowboy, once solitary, felt the profound weight of companionship, the kind that cannot be forced, only earned. She had nothing, yet she had everything that mattered, a life, trust, and someone who valued her for who she was. Their bond, forged in frost and hardship, now thrived in warmth and understanding. The story of the woman who had nothing and the cowboy who welcomed her teaches a lesson about compassion, trust, and the human spirit. Even in the harshest wilderness, even when the world offers nothing, a single act of kindness can save a life and transform it entirely. She found safety, warmth, and a renewed sense of hope. He found purpose, companionship, and a heart open to care in ways he never imagined. Together, they discovered that sometimes survival is not just about enduring the elements. It is about connecting, protecting, and believing in the value of another human soul.